Hello and welcome to the Race to 2020 podcast. I'm James Morrow here with my good friend, the lying dog-faced pony soldier, Jack Houghton, here to talk about the New Hampshire primary and everything that's going on in American politics. Now, what am I talking about? Well, I'll explain that to you in a bit, but the big news out of today is New Hampshire. As we come to you today, they are still voting in New Hampshire. We do not have results out of the polls, but one thing is for certain, this is going to be a very crucial contest because if Bernie Sanders wins this, they're going to have a much harder time screwing him out of this victory than they did back in Iowa last week.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, I hope we actually can walk away with a known winner this time.
I know. I was just thinking, what are they going to do? You know, Bernie clearly was going to win Iowa, and then there was all that Michigan, and now we probably don't even know. We'll probably never actually know really who won Iowa. Now we're going into New Hampshire. The polls have him well ahead of everybody else. So I'm just sort of imagining, what's going to happen tonight. Are they going to come out of the counting headquarters? Some old taciturn New Englander is going to come out and say, well, had a problem with the counting. Keith here spilled a vat of maple syrup on the ballots, or something like that. It's going
we jest, but it really is quite a pathetic way of running a caucus, and it's really it's harmed Pete Buttigieg as well because obviously ties.
I reckon it was great for him.
It came
I
out
reckon
that
it was great for him.
$40,000 was tied to the actual creation of the app, and then all of a sudden he's a winner. Now Pete the cheat seems to be trending.
Look,
so
maybe,
people
but
are
I think
accusing him of. I think it's a good sign for him, but I think that he missed an opportunity.
I think for him, it took him from a. It was weird because the people who benefited most from this were people like Pete Buttigieg, and the people who had the worst go at it were Sanders, who was supposed to have won the thing. So it allowed Buttigieg. Remember how he did that whole weird declare victory and leave thing, and he just said, "Yeah, hey, we won. Thank you, Iowa. I'm getting on the next plane. Bye. See ya. Ciao." And they just took off and got on a plane to New Hampshire. So that allowed him to have that. It's been a narrative control.
I guess the other way of looking at it is that the people that came second, the people that lost, they never really had to suffer the effects of a loss because it was unclear.
Yeah.
And then Pete Buttigieg, who, if you believe the results, who's come out on top, he didn't get that. He didn't get the wind in his sails to take him into New Hampshire. So in a way, he's almost been disadvantaged by the stuff up. But
what it did though is it took that sort of early Sanders momentum. It took a lot of wind out of his sails, and I think a lot of people are saying that Bernie Sanders made a big mistake there in not going really, really hard on this whole thing after that whole debacle and saying, hey, we won this, and just simply put the narrative that he won out there, because that I think would have been far more effective for him. But now we're in New Hampshire, first primary in the state. For what it's worth, at Dixville Notch, which is the opening precincts of the very first tiny little town, which has about 6 registered voters, Bloomberg won that 2-1, I think, but although his name's not even on the ballot, I don't think, in New Hampshire, so that's a bit strange. But, if Bloomberg wins, kiss your big gulp sodas goodbye, America, because that's all gone, and we can talk a bit more about Bloomberg later on.
Yep.
But let's go into New Hampshire. Now, latest polls, the latest average of the polls here has Sanders at 28.7, Buttigieg 21.3. Amy Klobuchar, who people were actually fairly sort of impressed with a little bit, kind of in some of the Iowa stuff, and especially in the debate that they had last Friday.
It was impressive, the confidence to go up there and claim victory despite actually performing.
Klobuchar.
Yeah.
Well,
she stood up there and she goes, look, we don't have the results, but just trust me, we did well. And all of her supporters are like, yay.
So Amy Klobuchar is this sort of interesting case here, and it's an interesting thing, that she's now trending well, or that some people are now saying, because they've cycled through absolutely everybody. Remember that huge field of candidates they had just a few months ago, and now we're down to kind of a smaller pack. She's survived, she's been a stayer, but I kind of feel like when they finally get down to saying, hey, maybe Amy Klobuchar is a great idea, it kind of, I don't know, it takes me back to when I was back in school, when I was a kid, and I was always picked last for a sports team, and it's like, hey, maybe that kid Morrow, he'll be all right, and I'm like, just don't know what I'm doing, and so so there's that. She is more moderate. That's the one thing people say. She is more moderate. She's more positive and pro-American. She's less strident on a lot of these very progressive issues. So some people are saying, she could be a stayer. The problem that Klobuchar has, of course, is that she's not the greatest boss in the world. And
Yes.
there's a lot of really bizarre stories. Now, I know that, offices in Washington are high pressure, just as offices in, Canberra are high pressure, and, anybody who's worked in that kind of atmosphere will tell you that they're pretty...
But it came out that she was quite nasty.
Nasty and nuts. And also just, there was some weird incident where she wound up eating a salad with a comb, and everybody just thought... That is just such bizarre,
I haven't heard this one.
feral behavior that, Google it. She ate a salad with a comb because there was no fork available, and she insisted, so she took a comb out of her purse and used that
I just think that's
to eat her salad.
creative.
You think it's a life hack?
She's good at adapting.
It's a life hack.
It depends how recently the comb was used, whether it was a dog comb, in what capacity.
Maybe it was like, I don't know, maybe if it was like
the
the fresh comb out of like the little thing they give you in
We
business
need
class.
answers.
We need answers. We need to know about the salad comb. We also need to know what sort of dressing was involved. I mean, like it was a creamy kind of dressing. I think that would,
It just doesn't work.
Or a vinaigrette.
And does she have dandruff?
Does she have dandruff? Were there croutons involved? There's a lot we need to know about this. But anyway, so Klobuchar still in the hunt in New Hampshire.
You made such a good point though before, and I think this comes down to an issue we've seen with the notion of electability. And you look at people like Amy, and you look at people like Joe, who are probably more electable if they were become Joe Biden, if they were to become against Donald Trump because of their moderate leanings. But the flaw with the Democratic primary system is you have to swing so far
to the right, so far to the left.
To win
okay. Well, so let's talk about this.
How do
Joe
you
Biden has sort of been caught between a sort of moderate leanings.
Yeah.
Also, a long past of like 50, 60 years in government, which has shown him to be very much a citizen of that other country that is known as the past, and that he kept getting pinged on that for things that he would have written about race or segregation 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, and that's and some would say unfairly because it's as if people don't evolve. But I think so. The really interesting thing about Biden was that he was the guy who ever just said, "Oh God, it's his turn." And I think probably in a regular election year he might have had more of a shot. But I think there's a few interesting things at play. Number one, I think that 2016 would have been his shot. But the Clinton machine ensured that she was going to be the candidate, and there was going to be no challenge. And this is part of a bigger problem, for the Democrats. They have, since they got involved with the Clintons on national stage in the early 90s, the Clinton machine has corrupted and destroyed absolutely everything that has touched in the Democratic Party. And today, the Democrat Party, the reason why they're in such a pickle, the reason why Trump won in 2016, and the reason why they don't have a candidate now is because for 30 years the Clinton machine was saying, no, this is a Bill Hillary succession plan and everybody else get out of the way. And so they didn't groom a whole generation of people who would be in their 50s and 60s right now who would have been senators and governors and things like that and able to put themselves forward as candidates who would have been tested by previous primaries.
And thank God the American people rejected notions of a dynasty.
Exactly, because it's like somebody noted that this would be the first election in decades without either a Clinton or a Bush on the ballot, and it's like it's like insane. But but Joe Biden got screwed by a couple of things though this time. Number one, the Hunter Biden thing, but I actually don't think that has had as much to do with why he hasn't done well this time around as I think just simply his age. He's 77 years old. That means that by the end of his first term, he's 81 years old, which is
that's
which
old.
is, like I know a lot of, really great 80-somethings.
I was just looking at the demographics of our audience on YouTube. They don't even have a category for 80-year-olds.
Yeah.
Because of demographically, they're irrelevant.
Octogenarians, we love you. Don't let those YouTube demography
I don't care.
people...
You're not even watching. You're not on the official demographics.
We love you. We love our older viewers.
We're 19 to 25-year-old, predominantly 75% male. So
really?
That's our target,
okay.
Yeah.
Hey, fellas, how you going, boys? But no. Like, I think his age really worked against him, as well as the Hunter thing. But the third thing that has worked against him is that he acts like he's completely senile and nuts all the time. So he keeps going after and attacking.
He said something else
he's
strange
attacking
recently,
voters.
Hasn't
So he's attacking voters. We saw the thing the other day where somebody challenged him on something, and he called him. He said, "Hey, listen, fat," and then he challenged him to push-ups. Do you remember that? That was bizarre. He
was trying to fight him.
It was like hold me back. I'm Joe Biden. I'm gonna get you. And then somebody challenged him about something else. We've got a little audio we'll put in here.
So you're arguably the candidate with the greatest advantage in this race. You've been the vice president. You weren't burdened down by the impeachment trials. Or in the participation. So how do you explain the performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
It's a good question. Number one, Iowa's a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying, dog-faced pony soldier.
Hey, you hear that? He calls this woman a lying, dog-faced pony soldier. What? I mean, which is just the most bizarre...
So who is giving this guy media advice? Doesn't he know that his cognition is really under the scope now? This isn't a
completely,
joke. He is falling off the polls. He's dropping below the point of the threshold to get delegates.
You know,
like this is his race is nearly over, and now he's going
to
call someone.
And so, you know, really,
I need to read this out again.
Yeah,
this
please.
is the funniest quote. What is this? Where's this quote? A lying, dog-faced pony soldier. Can we break this down for a second? Let's spend a little bit of time in here.
Well, apparently,
lying, dog-faced.
Apparently,
pony soldier.
Apparently, it's a weird call out to a John Wayne movie.
Right.
So So that's how far back his
I
cultural...
thought he was having a stroke.
No. He was going back to a John Wayne movie from like the 50s or something.
Okay.
And so that is how far back he goes, and that's where his cultural reference points are, which is I think again why he's strongly...
what's Pony Soldier?
It's okay. So it was about...
What is that?
It's a John Wayne quote about the soldiers who were patrolling the frontier in the West and everything, and they were the dog-faced soldiers and blah, blah, blah. It's a John Wayne thing. Apparently, that's where it comes from.
But not only that, it's also a deceptive, it's a lying dog-faced pony soldier. There's so many angles to
and
this.
it's just so many angles.
He just regurgitated it. And
right at a voter, on camera.
At a time where his age should be, hey, your play here is to be calm. Your play here is to be intelligent. Your play here is to be presidential and a moderate.
Still though,
he's challenging people to push-ups.
There are some young people who do still like Biden.
Oh, that's right.
And
we're going to have to play it.
Let's just have a look at this clip here. This is just...
Joe Biden, yeah, Joe Biden, yeah, Joe Biden, Biden's back, all right.
Biden's back. All right. Oh, how I love the guy in the bow tie, in the vest, with the visor.
Look,
I
don't want to shave. Look, I'm a fairly nerdy fella myself. You know, I've got the thick glasses. I don't want to shave, but gee, could he have got a less appealing kind of backdrop of people? It was the cringiest. That was cringiest of the cringiest.
That was so. The
it was
real
almost as good as Mayo Pete's. You know the
and yet
the dance,
the Mayo Pete. You know, look, hey, you know. I'm an outsider. We do a bit of dancing on the outside.
Yeah, I know you do like to dance.
Yeah, we do like to do.
And we might even put a little bit of James dancing.
Have a bit of a boogie, you know.
Is this what you've been doing at the back?
But so anyway, so the big thing to watch, like, how big a lead does Sanders come out with? If he doesn't come out ahead, he's cooked. Because people will say, well, he was just sort of flash in the pan. The other thing is how far down is Biden, because this is going to really sort. If he does fourth or worse, this is going to be pretty much the end of his campaign. The next primaries are Nevada on the 22nd, South Carolina on the 29th. Now,
and
that's
the one where Biden is looking quite strong.
Biden is supposed to be winning, but Sanders is close enough here.
Can he even hold on?
South Carolina is interesting because South Carolina is then where it's a bizarre one because you've got Steyer up there as well, Tom Steyer, and then you got Biden. So, I mean, if he doesn't do well in Nevada and South Carolina, I reckon the Biden campaign is cooked. And I'll be honest with you, I think that Joe Biden's heart just isn't in this, and I kind of feel like there's part of him that really just wants to go home. You know, I just don't get the energy from him that he wants this. I think he thinks this is going to be all too hard, and I think he's probably regretting not having, you know, gone out on the proverbial high note as Obama's VP and saying, boy, that was a great life of public service. Thank you, all America, and gone home and
Well,
done
if he
fly
wants to
fishing
go
or whatever
home,
he does.
I think statistically looking at this, he's going to get his wish.
Yeah.
I don't see any way he can come back from this.
Because then, California then. So really, we're coming into, what is it now, the 12th or whatever we're on today, the 12th. So within the next 3 weeks, huge amount of sorting is going to take place. New Hampshire tonight, Nevada, South Carolina, California. These are, huge. California especially. And we see Sanders right now in the lead in California. So, and California, again, the funny thing about the demographics there, that has become such a far-left progressive state that Sanders will do very well, and there's a lot of delegates there.
Yeah, and I think another really interesting thing is if you're looking at this national poll, the dark horse who's sitting out is Bloomberg. And if you look here, so we got Sanders is polling at 23, Biden's at 20.4, Bloomberg in at 3 at 13.6, 6 points, 0.6 of a point above Elizabeth Warren. He hasn't even entered a caucus.
Yeah, well, but what he has been doing is a lot of media buys. I mean, the amount of money that this guy has is just massive. And I saw this really sad story the other day. Apparently, he's buying Instagram influencers to $150 a post,
You knock it. That's the future.
I know.
These people command masses.
But like
massive
as if it's like a lot of that engagement's bogus.
Yeah,
you know that, like on Instagram and stuff like that.
We'll see. He's beating Warren without entering the primary.
Okay, so
something's sticking.
Well, something is sticking, but part of it again, I think, is this. There's three things that are affecting this. Number one, he's just simply a new voice on the crowd, and everybody is looking and saying, well, I like Sanders, but I don't think he can win because he's a communist. Joe Biden's too old. Amy Klobuchar's too crazy. Elizabeth Warren's too hectoring. What about this Bloomberg guy? It's kind of that they're out of office. The number two thing is that, people have not started to really interrogate. Number two thing is actually just the amount of money that he's putting through the system. And so that's giving him a lot of name recognition factor. The number three thing, is that people have not started to really interrogate what Bloomberg is all about. So all they know is that he's just a guy who was mayor of New York, who is a multi-billionaire.
Yes.
And I mean, he makes Donald Trump look poor by comparison. He is a true multi-billionaire in the billionaire sense of the word, not just a real estate guy like Trump. And so what's going to happen now, I think, is that we've got.
I think we should talk about the
Let's
stop
talk
and
about.
frisk thing. I know we were going to do it a bit later.
We were going to talk, but I think this is a good point to talk about because. So Mike Bloomberg was mayor of New York. He followed Rudy Giuliani. Now, his record as mayor, he is going to get interrogated so hard on that. So the number one thing...
He's saying, essentially, I cleaned up New York.
I kept the Giuliani thing going. Let's be honest.
Well, crime rates did drop. I mean, he was tough with policing. We're about to see just how tough he was. Because he continued the Giuliani policies. Now New York... It's a different city. New York is becoming a typical left-wing Democrat-run hellhole under this jerk de Blasio who's running the place, and there's now people are going and just trying to assassinate cops all the time and overrunning the transport system with riots, and it's horrible. I love New York; it's my old hometown, and what's happening now is terrible. But Bloomberg, when he two things that he was known for. Number one, big on the nanny state stuff, like really, really, really into nanny states. So if you think that like in a state like New South Wales, Gladys Berejiklian is a nanny stater, and like in Australia we're overregulated, he tried to limit the amount of soda you could buy at like restaurants and things like ridiculous
that. Ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing though that's more sinister, especially because the Democrats always rely on a heavy African-American vote, is that he was talking, a recording has come out, Donald Trump has slammed him over that, in which he's talking about when he was mayor, how, essentially the thing you have to do is flood black neighborhoods with cops and just pretty much stop and frisk everybody, because he said in this, pretty much every murder, he said you can Xerox the description, it's a young black male, and that's the neighborhoods where you have to put your police. Anyway, this has come out, and it's caused huge outrage. Now, why is this important? Well, the Democrats can't count on the black vote anymore. Trump is starting to, in more and more polls, peel away the black vote, the historically Democrat vote that's been, with them since at least Johnson in the 60s. They have been unable to peel that away. Now Trump is doing that. Why? 2 reasons. Number one, strong economy. Number two, crackdown on illegal immigration means that at the sort of the lower ends of the economy, there's not competition with low-wage, underpaid illegals, and that really helps a lot of people in both the working class and in a lot of black urban communities because jobs are coming back. They're getting jobs. And so a lot of them are saying, Trump's our guy. We didn't think so, but Trump's our guy. We're doing better because of the economy. And are they going to say, I'm going to vote for Bloomberg, who is this stop and frisk twerp from New York City? I don't think so, because, that's not going to make their life any better. And if you look at states, like Illinois, with big black populations in places like Chicago, if even some of those booths start to turn when the rest of the state goes Trump, suddenly states like Illinois, which are historically Democrat voters because of urban centers that pull the whole electoral vote with them, Trump could be picking up a lot of states that he wasn't supposed to if Bloomberg is a nominee.
Yeah, well, let's break down exactly what he said, because I don't think it's going to be as damaging for him if he plays it a certain way. So the way he's articulated it is incredibly poor. I think he phrased it along the words of you've got to throw them up against the wall, etc. It's a very aggressive way of phrasing it. But the mechanisms of searching somebody for a gun, I mean, that works, and we saw plummeting crime rates associated with the stop and frisk. And the argument that the Democrats try and push, and this is the more left-wing Democrats, is that it's racist to target certain ethnicity groups if it's disproportionate.
Yep.
So what they do is they go across and they say, well, if African Americans make up X percentage of the population, then you could only stop and frisk X percent. But what Bloomberg is saying is, well, no, if they commit 50% of the murders or something, then you don't want to be stopping and frisking the 13%. You want to be stopping and frisking the percentage which is actually related to criminality, because that is the percentage which is relevant in the data stream. So it's actually a question of the disproportionality argument is actually a flawed argument. It's not racist to target specifically based on percentages. I don't think.
His may be true.
Sure.
All that may be true. But politically, this plays terribly. Number one, in these communities.
If you think that black voters don't care about safe cities,
they do care about safe cities, and a lot of them were Giuliani supporters.
Lose.
But the reason why this is also a problem is because that sort of rhetoric is absolutely poison to a Democrat Party which has gone so far left and so progressive.
He will probably come out and apologize, but the best thing he could do is not apologize. It's come out and say, these are the facts. When I was in office and we were doing stop and frisk and we were doing it fairly, and I definitely didn't articulate it correctly, but you should be able to stop somebody and say, I can see a corner of a gun there. Do you have a permit? I should be able to do that. And by doing that, crime rates went from X down to X, and now we have less crime under my time there, and I stand by, and I would do it again, and I do believe in strong proactive policing because it led to X in these particular metrics.
Strong proactive policing,
and he should stand by it,
because the problem then will be that he will lose a lot of Democratic voters. And remember, Democrats don't have to vote, so. If because it's not compulsory voting in the states.
Are you talking about in the primaries?
I'm talking about in the general. So I'm saying, you put Bloomberg up there, and your radical left faction, they're going to stay home.
I think he's lost the radical left anyway. Look, I think we can't even talk about how this would play through the general if he can't get through the primaries. I think his only play here. Look, I don't reckon he should go up and champion his record like this if the audio wasn't leaked. I'm just saying as a response to the audio being leaked.
But I mean,
he should not apologize.
His whole
apologizes, he's cooked.
His whole mayoralty, never apologize, never explain. I like that.
Yeah.
His whole mayoralty is going to come under fire. But I want to go back to this other issue, too, because it takes us back to identity politics, which is basically at the heart of the whole problem that the Democrats have. And you've got a great story here, I think it's from the Washington Post, about the complaints about
sensational.
Women.
Let me read you out. This is the Washington Post.
Yep.
fairly left-leaning, as we know, not as left-leaning as some of them, which is why it's disappointing to see this kind of rhetoric creep in.
The Washington Post isn't fairly left-leaning.
Not as left as some of them.
It's like saying Izvestia is not as far left as Pravda.
Well, I mean, is it junky? You know,
well, okay, it's not junky,
we've got a spectrum.
But I mean, it is the Jeff Bezos Amazon
I said
Post.
It was left-leaning. I'm just saying it's not the.
No, the Tower of Pisa is left-leaning.
I don't mind the Post sometimes.
Okay,
I read everything. I don't think they're.
I read everything.
I don't think they're as radicalized as some people. But this is the kind of stuff that I think it turns readers off. They read this and it just shoved down their throat. So just before I read this out, let's remember Hillary Clinton. There's a couple of people a little bit sad that they didn't get to celebrate the first female president. Fair enough.
There's some great mashups on the web about that.
I think that's a fair enough milestone.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, we've had female prime ministers. You got Jacinta Ardern in New Zealand. I don't think you can make the argument.
Well, it goes back to that
the West rejects women.
It comes back to that whole fight, that fake fight that Elizabeth Warren tried to conjure up about Bernie Sanders.
Exactly.
Which was completely bogus, and everybody rejected that. And now Warren is
someone should not win office
obscurity.
because of what's between their legs. Period.
The only thing to me is what's between their ears.
Yeah. So anyway. Warren and Klobuchar are the last two women standing in the top tier of presidential contenders. So obviously there's some people creeping through still at the end, but these are the last two people that have any kind of resemblance of a chance.
Well, I mean, that's 2 out of 5.
Then the journalist writes this sentence. 4 years after many voters were disappointed that Hillary Clinton didn't become the first female president, 2 senators are still in the hunt. So this is a straight news story.
Hang on.
This is a straight news story.
Is there an editor at work to send this copy back to the journal and say, son, how much is many?
4 years after my what did you phrase it? 4 years after my local book club were disappointed.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's like that's pretty much what it is. You know,
such an absurd way to write a straight news story. They can't just say, "Hey, by the way, there's 2 women remaining." It has to be through the connotation of there is disappointment. This is a bad thing because there's only 2 female candidates here, and voters have been let down yet again. It says they're fighting for a bronze ticket out of this pivotal early stage and the chance to take on President Trump.
Are they saying, hang on, and I think this is a good note to end on. Why are Democrat primary voters in Iowa and New Hampshire such a bunch of sexist bastards? Honestly, that's what they're saying.
This is the Democrats.
But this is the Democrats. It's not the Republicans. It's not Middle America. It's you guys.
Politics
you own it, guys. You own it.
People who actually subscribe to identity politics make up such a tiny proportion. They can't even get these people over the line in their primaries. How are they going to go in a general election convincing the broader populace who does not subscribe to that way of thinking that this is the correct way to view society? They won't be able to do it. They can't even do it amongst their own friends and their own colleagues. How are they going to convince people who have voted Republican one year, and voted Democrats the other? How are they going to convince swing voters?
They
can't even convince their own.
Trump is going to win again. So, and I think on that note, like we saw that meme the other day when Trump posted that had him being president forever. Well, if they keep thinking like that, that's the way it's going to be.
I don't see any way they can beat him.
Anyway, that's all we got time for this week. I'm James Morrow, here with Jack Houghton. We'll be back next week. Keep sending us your feedback. I promise we will read some. In the meantime, you can watch Jack on Sky News. You can watch me on Outsiders, 9 a.m. Sunday mornings, and read me in the Daily Telegraph. We will see you next week. And hey, hopefully we'll have a result in New Hampshire, and there won't be a bunch of maple syrup spilled all over the ballots. See you next week.